Okay, the first thing we want to do on our hopper ends is dirty up the panels just behind the ladders there. And we're going to do that like this. Don't know how many of you guys have an art palette like this, but the first thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of raw umber. I use water mixable oil color from Winsor & Newton. Just going to put a little dab there. Don't need much, really. And we're going to dilute that with Microsol. Why am I doing that? Well, it's just a nice way to thin it out. Let's put this to the side for a minute. I'm going to take a little bit of ivory black gouache. Black goes a long way, so it's like it's concentrated. Take a little bit of that, put that into a mixture of raw umber, stir it around a little bit. The reason why I'm doing this is I don't really want my wash to be just straight black or straight brown. This will give it a little bit more depth. You know, when people look at it, they might say, you know, I think I'm seeing brown, I think I'm seeing black. I'm not really sure. But that's the trick. It gives a little depth. Alright. Let's see here. Sorry about that. Got a little black brown going. We're going to use this as a wash. You could thin this out however much you want. You could even thin it out right on the model if it goes on too dark. Alright, here we go. Alright, let's see here. Just gonna working on the back end here, so we're just gonna dirty up. Just to block it all in, we're just gonna slop it on all on the back side. You could even just, if it's wet enough, and just let it roll down the slope. If you can see what I'm doing there. Yeah, I'm just dabbing it in there. And while you're at it, you want to do the ends of the ladder rungs. You can do that too. So basically you're just dirtying it up. And when you get done doing that, we'll move on to the next step. Okay, once you have dirtied up the end of the car, you can tone that down a bit just by using some Microsol, dipping your brush in there, and you don't have to have any of the paint on your brush. Just kind of like almost like a super thin coat of Microsol, almost clear. And you can then go in and basically take out or take off. If you applied it too dark, you can take it off to lighten it up a little bit. The one good thing about using the water mixable oil color or the gouache is you can reactivate it, so it's not permanent. It's not going to be permanent until you dull coat it. So that's the great thing about using it. So I'm going to go in here, and there are some areas that, if maybe I feel that are too dark, I can just go in and re-wet that and just keep dabbing at it until it looks the way you want it to look. You definitely don't want to see brush strokes. That wouldn't be too good. Give it a little stippling. You could even let the wash roll down the slope a little bit, but you definitely want it to look like it's natural, like it wasn't applied by by a big human being. I know that's kind of funny, but that's pretty much the look you're going for. Almost, it has to look soft. This is pretty much just the blocking in and getting it to look a little aged or grimy. Don't know if you can see that. But that's kind of what we're going for. We'll let that dry for a little bit, which is pretty much dry already. And then we'll move on to some more detailing. I also want you guys to get a shot of this palette here, and you'll see I have my darks here, and then as I dip more into the Microsol, I can also do a very thinned out wash. Oh. But that's the transition you should have on your palette. Light to dark, dark to light. Definitely want to work it that way. I also want to mention that you guys need to think about where dirt would collect the most and really work those areas in those cracks to get it dark. I'm not sure you can see that. But you don't want it to look flat. Every little crack, that's where a lot of the dirt's going to collect. Think about, over time, the roof collects dirt, it rains, goes down the slope, collects into the little cracks and crevices. So those are probably going to be the darkest. All right. Okay, once you get the end of the car dirtied up the way you like it, we're going to start to create signs of rust. We're going to do that by using some raw sienna, which is right here, right there. And what you want to do is apply some of the early signs of rusting around the attachment points where metal meets metal and where water will collect. Let's say right around where the roof attaches. There's usually a brace right here. I don't have it attached right now, but coming down from there, you're going to want some streaks, and right around here, here, and behind here, you can have those coming down in a straight line. But they're not going to be real clear. It's just going to be very faint. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. Alright, first we're going to take some of this water soluble. This is what I use, water mixable oil color. Put a little dab on there. I don't really need much. Take a fine brush if you have it. The one I'm using right here, this is a, what's it look like? 5.0. .0 5/0, something like that. That's very fine. Dip in a little bit of Microsol. Get a little bit on the brush there. Not too thick, just kind of like a wash. Okay. And you're just going to go and put a little bit right behind those points of contact. Going down. Right down. This is as if water had been running down from those points. And that path has started to rust. So just very carefully create a fine line. Doesn't have to be too fine. We're going to take a soft brush and we're going to mute that out in a little bit. So it's not going to look real fine. It's just to get the color on there. All right. Maybe behind the ladder here, coming down. And yes, when since your brush is wet and I haven't dull coated our grime layer, it is going to wet that up a little bit. So you got to be careful you're not going to move that around and make that disappear. You can do it however you want it. I feel I can control it enough where I'm not going to mess up what I had done. If you want to dull coat and then go and do this step, that's fine. Since I don't have the brace on there for the end of the roof, I just kind of know where it's going to be, somewhere around here. I'm just going to get a little rusting going on down there. And as far how far down you want it to go, it's up to you. So we'll just leave it at that right now. Something like that. Okay. Let's turn it down, put the brush down. Now I'm going to take a little bit wider brush. This is kind of like my stippling brush. The end of it is pretty much frayed. It's been used a lot. Good for stippling. If you have an old brush that pretty much worn out, that's a good brush to use. This is a number 2. Cheapy Walmart art color brand. Nothing too expensive. Wet the brush a little bit. Got a paper towel on the side here. You can always dry it off just to get the brush wet there. Alright, now we're going to dab at what we did. Just kind of soften that rust there. Alright. Very lightly. Just want to soften that up. By softening up that raw sienna, it's going to look like that area has rust starting, or beginning, very faint, like it's coming through the metal. Now while I'm doing this, I could see that some of the oil that I applied, when it dries, if you don't get to it quickly, it creates a sharp edge. And you don't really want that at this point. I think alcohol does the same thing. Just want to soften it. You can see how that's turning out. Let me just continue over here. Yeah, you got to be careful not to crack any of these fine ladder parts. At this point, my brush is pretty much almost dry. Alright, stand back, you take a look at it, and you go, alright, it's looking pretty good. Now, you could say, well, it just looks pretty much splotchy all over the place. What about those points of contact and only having the rust come down specifically behind those that brace attachment up here? Well, what you can do is, now that you kind of have a little bit of the rusting in place that's coming through, you can go in between here and kind of wet that and take that off. Wet a little bit, take that off, and here take that off, and you won't be touching behind the braces, so that it will look like only the rust. You'll leave behind only the rust that's behind those braces. So we can do that right now. Just re-wetting the brush. And I'm going to go in and just maybe even turn my brush sideways so that it's long ways, and just kind of wet that a little bit and do some takeoff technique. If you want to dry your brush off, that's fine. This side. So, you know, by doing this, I'm actually revealing more of the original color of the car. And trying not to touch what's behind the brace, these braces right here. Then it looks like it's only been rusting from behind the area where it's been coming down from the slope where the brace attaches to the ends there. Paying attention to that kind of detail is gonna what set you apart from people who don't really care about that kind of detail. Some people don't notice it, some people will notice it. It's just kind of like the way I like to do things. You're always going to get people say, oh, well, that's not right, it's not how it's going to look, it's not how it would ever look. You know, you could always take creative license. Many of us do. Now, at this point, if you feel that maybe you took off too much of the grime from earlier, you could always go back and grime up some of those areas there. All right, let's see. Yeah, take the rust down as far as you want to go. Even by going in between here, you're going to probably end up creating a fine line of rust coming from behind there. And if you want, you can go in with a little bit more detail. Let me turn this upside down and see if you can see that too. Not sure how that looks. Okay. You get the idea. The trick is you got to do a lot of layering. Some people don't have the patience for that. Me, I don't mind it. I know what the end result is going to be. And that's what wins out over spending a lot of time on this. It's going to look great in the end. Yeah. So that's all right. Okay. Another area that we're going to work on is going to be where the wheels kick up a lot of the dirt and rainwater onto the back side of the slope, which is going to kick up pretty much right behind the wheels there in those two areas. And we're going to do that with a little bit of a darker medium. Actually, maybe some of the early mix that we did right here, we'll dirty that up, and we're going to definitely make that pronounced, where those lines are, where it's going to kick up dirt there. And we'll do that next. Alright. There is one thing I did want to mention, and that is because this is a tutorial about how to detail the ends of a car, you probably want to, if that's your choice, you probably want to fade the car down first if that's what you're going to be doing. So if you're doing that with the airbrush or however you do it, I'd probably fade the whole car down first, ends and all, and then then you would go in on this detailing. So, but this tutorial is to show you guys how to work the ends. So we're just pretending that it was faded down first. So anyhow, all right. So now we're going to create the where the dirt gets kicked up on the backside, and we're going to use some raw umber again, and our ivory black gouache, and I already have that mixed up on our palette from earlier. We just have to reactivate it. A little bit of Microsol. Alright. Stir that around a little bit. Okay, and just like we did the ends with the rust earlier, we're going to do the same thing. We'll apply it, and then we're going to buff it down, or stipple it with a soft brush. But let's see here. Just line up where the wheels would kick that up, and let's see here. A little dirt there. And a little bit of there on this side. As far as how high, going up the panel there, I would probably just use a prototype photo as a reference to see how high you want, comparison. Okay, right now you'll see it just looks messy. It's just slopped in there. Don't worry about trying to get it perfect and a straight line and all that right now. You'll never get it like that. Just want to apply the color. And it's a little too black. Get some of that raw umber there. It'd be crazy getting in there with an airbrush real fine, but alright. So now we're gonna go and pretty much take that off slightly. Alright. Again with the worn brush. That's a number 2. You got one. Let's try this dry right now and see what happens. Looks like it's kind of wet still, so I'm going to try to dry it down just by stippling it a little bit. Yeah, I'm just stippling it dry. I want to do it lightly too, because you take it all off and you're starting all over again. Alright, let me just put that down for a minute and clean this brush. Alright, now that the brush is wet, I'm going to go in and start doing some taking off. And while you're doing that, you're actually creating a finer line. So it's not so spread out. If you want to go back with your finer brush and create more of a line, that's cool too. So far where it stands, my line's pretty much disappeared by doing that. But I'm going to go back in, finer, again. But by doing that, I actually created a little bit of dirt around that surrounding area. Almost like it was sprayed there. Alright, let's take a little bit of the brown, or the raw umber. Go right over the wheels there. Just going fine. Get a little bit finer this time. I would almost suggest the brush not being too wet. So whatever mixture you have of your raw umber, not too wet, not too thick. Alright, yeah, the brown looks a little bit better. Don't want to get too black. Alright. Right now it's wet, but quickly I think I'm going to stipple that dry a little bit to form fade the look I'm going for before it dries sharp. So I'm just, stippling dry over that area where I made the line. And to make that area a little bit more pronounced, I'll probably go in between and do some takeoff in between, which will then create a little bit darker streaks on that back panel. So I'll go in between. I'll wet the brush a little bit. I don't want it too wet because it's going to start taking away what I did. I'm going to go right in the middle here. And just go right down the middle of the panel and stipple a little bit to pull off some of that paint. Wipe it on a paper towel. A little bit more. So that it shows a little bit more of the color of the back of the car, the gray. Alright. Then, a little bit more. Yeah. Try not to disturb the area that you just created, where the dirt kicks up from the wheels. Try to define that line by taking off what would be beside it, revealing some of the car, the gray color of the car. I know it's kind of like a backward step, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. All right, let's see here. Think a little bit more on this side. Over here is where I need to take a little bit more off. Let's see if you can see that. So try to get those looking nice and pronounced, so you know that, you know, the dirt there came from the wheel. Soften it up so it's not too crisp, but you still want to know that the dirt got there by the kick up of the wheel spinning. Alright, and when you get done with that, we'll move on to the next step. Alright guys, we're back here, and I found a real good brush. I meant to bring this up before. It's a number 8, kind of looks like this. You can see that. Turn it the other way. It's real good for getting in the back of this hopper, creating those lines, the kick-up dirt lines. So while I was away, while you guys were finishing up on that, let me show you how easy it goes in there. It's just, it stays real nice and flat, real fine. You can get right in there and create your lines. So that's what I was doing, and this is, you know, you're going to tweak this stuff until you get it right and until it looks the way you want it to look. So that's what I want you guys to do. You can see that in there right now. Alright, next step, we're going to actually use some hairspray, and we're going to wet the surface of those panels just slightly, and then we're going to move into some weathering powders, and I'm going to show you a little trick that I like to do. This is kind of like a splatter effect, being that, you know, I don't want to go in there and start manipulating more stuff around to create more effects. Since I'm not dull coating in between, although you can, and it'd probably be better. But for this, I'm going to spray the end there with some hairspray and just wet the surface. Hold on a sec. Alright, while it's wet, you want to get some weathering powder. And I got to do this fast, so I'll tell you which one that is in a few minutes. But what I like to do is actually just tap on the end of the car just slightly to create a right into the wet surface, like this. And what's going to happen is the weathering powder is going to land right into the car, like that, into the back. Just let gravity do its thing, and it's going to stick right onto the wet hairspray. Now I'm looking at it right now, and it's too late. I can't go in there and touch it, otherwise it's just going to be a mess. But you get the idea. You got to go light. Don't put too much powder on the end of your dry brush, but just enough to let a little bit fall, and it'll create like a splatter effect. Now we're not going to touch that. That's just going to dry. And then you can seal it with dull coat, or if you're using hairspray, but the best is probably dull coat. Then I'd say that, you know, if too much weathering powder fell, you know, you would try to go in and repair it a little bit, but you get the idea. Let me see if I can get this a little closer so you guys can see. Just looks like it's kind of splattered up there. you definitely you don't want to touch it now. You'll make a big mess. All right. Once that's dull coated, if you want to go and actually tweak it a little bit more, any sort of little details near the equipment and so forth, definitely you can go in and do that. But I would say working in layers is the best. Dull coating in between, preferably dull coat from a airbrush, not from a can, and just continue layering on, and you'll get a real nice effect. I'll probably end up taking some digital shots of this so you guys get a little bit closer look instead of seeing it through video. Alright, and that's that on Hopper End tutorial. Oh, one last thing I do want to mention. Any of the ladder rungs, you know, you could always go in and where the bolts are, you know, go in and just, you can detail those later. But I definitely wanted to just show you guys the slope part of the hopper, because a lot of people hate doing that part. So those are kinds of the ways I tackle it. And then once that's done, I go ahead and detail everything on the outside, which is pretty easy to do. Alright, thanks. Oh, I think I did forget one thing. The weathering powder. This is from AIM, Adventures in Miniature. And the color that I'm using is kind of like a charcoal brown. There's really no name on it. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's not really brown. It's like a charcoal brown, I'd say. Like a gray brown. Earth brown. Not sure which one that is, but if you guys are interested in using this, contact Mark, or you can look up Mark B on modeltrainsweather.com, or go to Adventures in Miniature or AIMproducts.com. I think that's products, PRODX.com. But that's the one I'm using for that. Thanks.